and the glimmering heart of New York City, where the holiday spirit was as vibrant as the twinkling lights lining Fifth Avenue, a shocking incident at the renowned Grand Evergreen Mall left one mother determined to make her voice heard. Known for its opulent Christmas displays and the city's most famous Santa Claus, the mall had long been a destination where families created treasured holiday memories. But for one little girl, this year's visit would bring tears instead of joy. That girl was Maya Lawrence, a bright-eyed 6-year-old with a smile as wide as the sparkling garlands above her head. Her mother, Anika Lawrence, a hard-working single parent, had dreamed of this day for weeks. As a nurse, Anika worked tireless hours to provide the best for her daughter, and this holiday season was no different. She'd spent her limited savings on the perfect red and white dress for Maya, and woke up early to make sure her daughter's Christmas wish, sitting on Santa's lap for a photo, would come true. The Grand Evergreen Mall's Santa Claus experience was no ordinary one. Adorned with an elaborate golden throne and surrounded by a cascade of artificial snow, it was a spectacle that drew families from all over the city. Anika had no doubt it would be magical for Maya, but magic quickly turned into disbelief. As Maya clutched her mother's hand, barely able to contain her excitement, the pair finally reached the front of the line. A staff member in an elf costume approached them with a stiff smile. "Please wait a moment," he said, his tone laced with hesitation. Confused, Anika glanced behind her. Other children were gleefully climbing onto Santa's lap, posing for pictures and sharing their Christmas wishes. There was no apparent reason for the delay. Yet as the seconds turned to minutes, Anika's patience gave way to frustration. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. The assistant fidgeted nervously, avoiding Anika's gaze. We're asking if you'd prefer to take a picture beside Santa, rather than, sitting on his lap." Maya's radiant smile began to falter. She tugged on her mother's sleeve, whispering, "But I wanted to tell Santa what I want for Christmas." Anika's heart sank as she looked into her daughter's confused eyes. The unspoken truth was clear. Maya's skin, brown and beautiful, was the only thing that set her apart from the other children. Still, Anika tried to give the staff the benefit of the doubt. "Why can't my daughter sit on Santa's lap?" she asked, keeping her tone measured, though anger simmered beneath her words. The assistant mumbled something incoherent before gesturing toward the event manager, a sharply dressed woman overseeing the scene from a distance. Determined, Anika strode over, pulling Maya gently along with her. "Excuse me," Anika said, addressing the manager directly. "I need to understand why my daughter is being treated differently from every other child here." The manager stiffened, her professional facade faltering under Anika's unrelenting gaze. "I'm sorry if this has upset you," she began, her tone clipped and robotic. "But we aim to create a certain standard of experience for all our guests." Anika felt her breath catch in her throat. "A standard of experience?" she repeated, incredulous. "What exactly about my daughter doesn't meet your standards?" The manager shifted uncomfortably, offering a vague explanation about corporate policies that did little to mask the underlying prejudice. Anika glanced back at the line of children, all of them sitting happily on Santa's lap, none of them looking like Maya. By now, other parents in the crowd had begun to notice the tension. Some murmured to each other, their faces a mix of curiosity and discomfort. Maya clung to her mother's side, her earlier excitement now replaced with a quiet sadness. Then came the moment that broke Anika's heart. Maya, her voice trembling, asked, "Mommy, am I not good enough for Santa?" Those words pierced through Anika like a dagger. In that instant, she knew she couldn't stay silent. She crouched down to Maya's level, placing both hands on her daughter's shoulders. "Maya," she said firmly, her voice filled with resolve, "you are more than good enough, and don't you ever forget that." Straightening up, Anika turned back to the manager, her eyes blazing with defiance. "You may think you can deny my daughter a moment she's been dreaming of, but let me tell you something," she said, her voice rising so everyone around could hear. "The magic of Christmas doesn't belong to you, and it certainly doesn't belong to some outdated, narrow-minded idea of who deserves it." Without waiting for a response, Anika took Maya's hand and walked out of the mall, her head held high. The crowd parted as they passed, whispers rippling through the air. But Anika didn't care. She was on a mission. That same evening, Anika shared the story on social media, her words fueled by both heartbreak and determination. Today, my daughter learned that even the joy of Christmas isn't safe from discrimination, but I will not let her light be dimmed. To every parent reading this, stand up for your children, demand better, because they deserve it. The post went viral within hours. Celebrities, activists, and everyday people alike rallied behind Anika and Maya. Hashtags like Chowing Santa for All and Christmas Belongs. Everyone trended worldwide, sparking a larger conversation about inclusivity and the subtle, insidious ways racism manifests, even in the most innocent spaces. The Grand Evergreen Mall, overwhelmed by public outrage, issued a formal apology the next day. But for Anika, the damage had been done. She didn't need their apology. What she needed, and what she achieved, was a moment that proved to Maya that her voice, her presence, and her worth could never be diminished. Not by a mall, not by a Santa, and not by anyone. This Christmas, Maya didn't sit on Santa's lap, but she became a symbol of something much greater. The enduring power of love, courage, and a mother's determination to fight for what's right. The fallout from Anika's story was swift and unrelenting. Within days, news outlets picked up the viral post, splashing headlines across screens and newspapers nationwide. Discrimination at the heart of Christmas, Mall Santa sparks outrage, and Mother's fight for justice ignites global conversation on holiday racism. Everywhere she turned, Anika found herself the center of attention. Reporters camped outside her modest Brooklyn apartment, hoping for an exclusive interview. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages of support, some from strangers, others from people she hadn't spoken to in years. The sudden fame was overwhelming, but Anika kept her focus on Maya. To shield her daughter from the chaos, Anika made arrangements for Maya to stay with her grandmother for a few days. The little girl didn't fully understand what was happening, but she knew her mother had done something important. Before leaving, Maya hugged her tightly and whispered, "Mommy, you're my hero." Those words became Anika's anchor. At work, her colleagues rallied around her. Nurses on her floor brought coffee and snacks, slipping encouraging notes into her locker. One day, her supervisor, a no-nonsense woman named Linda Morales, pulled her aside. "You've done something incredible, Anika," Linda said, her voice softer than usual. "But you need to be prepared. Not everyone's going to be supportive." Linda's warning came true faster than Anika expected. Alongside the outpouring of love came a wave of backlash. Social media trolls accused her of overreacting, claiming she had ruined Christmas for countless families by stirring up controversy. Some even suggested she was lying for attention. One particularly nasty comment stuck in Anika's mind. "Maybe the problem isn't the mall. Maybe it's you teaching your daughter to see racism everywhere." The words stung, but they also fueled her resolve. Anika decided it was time to reclaim the narrative. With the help of a local advocacy group that had reached out to her, she scheduled a press conference in a community center not far from her home. When the day arrived, the room was packed with journalists, activists, and supporters. Standing at the podium, Anika felt her nerves threaten to overwhelm her. But then she glanced at a photo of Maya in the audience, held up by her grandmother. Maya's bright smile reminded her why she was there. "This isn't just about my daughter," Anika began, her voice steady despite the cameras clicking furiously. "This is about every child who has ever been made to feel like they don't belong. No parent should have to explain to their child why they're treated differently. No child should ever have to wonder if they're good enough." Her words resonated far beyond the room. Clips of her speech flooded the internet, sparking further conversations about the often overlooked ways prejudice seeps into society. But the movement wasn't just happening online. Across the country, protests erupted outside malls, demanding that holiday events be more inclusive. Activists pushed for better training for event staff to prevent similar incidents. The National Coalition for Diversity, a prominent civil rights organization, even offered to work with the Grand Evergreen Mall to set new standards for holiday programming. Meanwhile, Anika began receiving invitations from talk shows and panel discussions. At first, she declined, wanting to keep her focus on Maya and her job. But when Oprah Winfrey's team reached out, she couldn't say no. On the show, Anika recounted the events of that fateful day with raw honesty. She shared Maya's heartbreaking question, "Mommy, am I not good enough for Santa?" and her determination to turn that pain into change. By the end of the interview, the audience was on its feet, giving her a standing ovation. One viewer in particular was deeply moved. Liam Connors, a retired mall Santa from Ohio. After watching the segment, he decided to reach out to Anika directly. "I've played Santa for over 30 years," Liam wrote in an email, "and the thought of any child being turned away breaks my heart. I'd be honored to give Maya the Christmas she deserves." Anika was skeptical at first. She'd grown wary of offers that felt too good to be true. But after a long phone call with Liam, during which he shared stories of his own struggles to make the role of Santa more inclusive, she felt a glimmer of hope. A week later, Anika and Maya boarded a plane to Ohio, where Liam had arranged a special visit for them. Unlike the glitzy, commercialized setup at the Grand Evergreen Mall, Liam's Santa experience was held in a cozy community center decorated by volunteers. The warmth of the place was palpable, from the hand-knit stockings hanging by the fireplace to the scent of homemade gingerbread cookies wafting through the air. When Maya finally sat on Liam's lap, her eyes sparkled with joy. She told him about her Christmas wish, a puppy, and giggled as he gave her a big jolly laugh in return. For the first time in weeks, Anika felt a sense of peace. As Christmas approached, Anika reflected on everything that had happened. What began as a painful moment for Maya had grown into a nationwide movement, one that challenged long-held traditions and demanded change. While the road ahead was still long, Anika knew they had taken the first step. That Christmas morning, Maya woke up to find a tiny golden retriever puppy wagging its tail under the tree, a red bow tied around its neck. Tears of joy streamed down her face as she hugged the little dog, who she promptly named Hero. For Anika, it was a reminder that even in the face of injustice, love and resilience could create new kinds of magic. As the dust from the media frenzy began to settle, Anika found herself thrust into a new reality. She had become an unintentional activist, a symbol of resistance for parents fighting to create a better, more inclusive world for their children. But with that role came challenges she had never anticipated. Though Maya's trip to Ohio with Liam Connors had ended on a joyous note, the fight for change was far from over. The Grand Evergreen Mall had issued a lukewarm apology, claiming the incident was a misunderstanding and promising to review its policies. For Anika, this hollow response only added fuel to the fire. "A misunderstanding doesn't erase the harm," Anika told a local news station. "What happened to my daughter isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a larger issue that needs to be addressed." The mall's response only emboldened critics, but it also brought new opposition. The backlash intensified, with detractors accusing Anika of playing the victim and turning a simple mistake into a spectacle. Online forums erupted with heated debates, and conservative pundits used her story to argue against what they called oversensitivity in modern society. One day, while scrolling through her phone during a lunch break at work, Anika stumbled upon a scathing article in a prominent blog. "When cancel culture comes for Santa, the overreach of political correctness." Her stomach churned as she read the piece, which painted her as a manipulative opportunist seeking attention at the expense of the holiday spirit. The strain began to weigh heavily on Anika. She'd always been a private person, content with her quiet life as a nurse and mother. Now her name was splashed across headlines, her every word scrutinized by strangers. Even trips to the grocery store became nerve-wracking, as she noticed people whispering or pointing when they recognized her. The worst moments came at night when she was alone with her thoughts. Lying in bed, she replayed the events over and over, questioning if she had done the right thing by speaking out. Was she making things harder for Maya? Had she unintentionally made her daughter a target? It was during one of these sleepless nights that Anika received an unexpected email. The sender's name was unfamiliar, but the subject line stopped her in her tracks. "From someone who stands with you." Opening the email, Anika read, "Dear Ms. Lawrence, I'm writing to tell you how much your story has meant to me and my family. I'm a father of 3, and my youngest daughter, Amara, is the same age as Maya. Like your daughter, Amara has faced moments of feeling out of place simply because of how she looks. Your bravery in standing up for Maya has shown us that we're not alone, and it's inspired me to do better for my own children. Please don't let the negativity drown out the good you're doing. You're making a difference." The message brought tears to Anika's eyes. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of clarity. This fight wasn't just about her or even about Maya. It was about creating a world where no child would ever have to question their worth. Motivated by the outpouring of support from parents like the man who wrote the email, Anika began to organize. With the help of the advocacy group she had worked with earlier, she launched an initiative called Santa for All, aimed at ensuring that holiday events across the country embraced diversity and inclusion. The movement quickly gained traction. Community leaders, teachers, and even businesses joined forces, pledging to make their holiday celebrations more inclusive. Schools hosted workshops on cultural sensitivity, and local malls began partnering with Santa for All to train their staff. But the Grand Evergreen Mall remained silent. Despite the growing pressure, its corporate owners refused to take meaningful action. Anika decided it was time to take a stand once more. She rallied her supporters for a peaceful protest outside the mall, inviting families to join her in demanding accountability. On the morning of the protest, the sidewalk in front of the mall was packed with parents and children holding signs that read, "Christmas is for everyone and no child left out." Maya, holding her own hand-drawn sign, stood proudly beside her mother. "Mommy," she said, her voice filled with determination, "are we going to win?" Anika knelt down, meeting her daughter's gaze. "We've already won, baby," she said, "because we're showing people that we won't stay quiet when something isn't right." Inside the mall, the corporate executives watched the protest unfold with growing unease. News cameras had gathered to cover the event, and footage of smiling children holding signs was spreading rapidly on social media. The negative PR was reaching a boiling point. By the end of the day, the mall's owners released a statement. This time, it wasn't just an apology. They announced a partnership with Santa for All, pledging to implement immediate changes to their events and to donate a portion of their holiday profits to diversity-focused charities. The announcement was a major victory, but for Anika, it wasn't about the mall's response. It was about the movement they had sparked. That evening, as Anika and Maya returned home, the weight of the day's events began to sink in. Exhausted but triumphant, Anika tucked Maya into bed, brushing her curls away from her face. "I'm proud of you, Mommy," Maya said sleepily. "I'm proud of you too, sweetheart," Anika replied, her voice thick with emotion. As she turned off the light, Anika felt a profound sense of peace. They had faced criticism, doubt, and hardship, but they had also built something extraordinary, a legacy of courage and love that would outlast the season. As the Santa for All movement gained national attention, Anika found herself navigating an increasingly complicated world. What had started as a mother's quest to protect her daughter had evolved into a larger battle for representation, one that brought unexpected allies and adversaries into her life. Among the allies was Pastor Derek Williams, a charismatic leader of a Harlem-based community center that hosted free holiday events for underprivileged families. Inspired by Anika's story, Pastor Williams invited her to collaborate on a new project, a city-wide initiative to provide inclusive holiday experiences for children of all backgrounds. At first, Anika hesitated. Between her nursing shifts, media appearances, and caring for Maya, she barely had time to breathe. But Pastor Williams's vision resonated deeply with her. "This isn't just about Santa," he told her during their first meeting. "It's about showing kids that they belong, no matter where they come from or what they look like. Together we can give them that gift." Moved by his passion, Anika agreed to help. Over the following weeks, she worked tirelessly with the pastor and his team, organizing events that featured Santas of all ethnicities, as well as activities celebrating diverse holiday traditions. The events were a resounding success. Families from across the city attended, many expressing gratitude for an experience that made their children feel seen and valued. Maya, now a little spokesperson for the cause, proudly handed out flyers and posed for pictures with the children who attended. But as the initiative grew, so did the pushback. One evening, while scrolling through her emails, Anika noticed a subject line that sent a chill down her spine. "Stop ruining Christmas." The email was filled with hateful language, accusing her of destroying tradition and forcing politics into a sacred holiday. Similar messages began flooding her inbox and social media accounts. Some were thinly veiled threats, warning her to back off or face consequences. Anika tried to brush off the negativity, focusing instead on the overwhelming support she continued to receive. But one morning, as she walked Maya to school, A man approached her on the street. "You're that woman from the news, aren't you?" he asked, his tone sharp. Anika instinctively tightened her grip on Maya's hand. "I don't mean any harm," the man said, though his expression was anything but friendly. "I just think you should know that not everyone agrees with what you're doing. Some of us think you're taking things too far." Anika didn't respond. She simply walked away, her heart pounding. That evening, she called Pastor Williams to share what had happened. "This isn't just about me anymore," she said, her voice trembling. "I can't put Maya at risk." "I hear you," Pastor Williams said, his tone calm but resolute. "But remember, Anika, the work we're doing is bigger than any one of us. You've already made an impact, and nothing can take that away." Despite her fears, Anika pressed on. The culmination of their efforts was a massive holiday celebration held in Central Park, complete with carolers, gift giveaways, and a lineup of Santas representing cultures from around the world. The event drew thousands of attendees, including reporters eager to cover the groundbreaking initiative. Maya beamed as she introduced herself to the diverse Santas, proudly telling each one about the movement her mother had started. As Anika watched her daughter laugh and play, she felt a surge of pride. This was the magic she had dreamed of creating, not just for Maya, but for every child who had ever felt out of place. But not everyone shared her joy. Unbeknownst to Anika, the Grand Evergreen Mall was quietly plotting its next move. Embarrassed by the ongoing negative press, the mall's corporate team had decided to strike back. They filed a defamation lawsuit against Anika, accusing her of spreading false information that damaged their reputation. When Anika received the court summons, she was stunned. She had expected resistance, but this felt like a calculated attack. The mall's legal team was well-funded and aggressive, and Anika knew she couldn't fight them alone. Pastor Williams, however, refused to let her stand alone. He helped connect Anika with a team of pro bono lawyers who were passionate about her cause. Among them was Rachel Chen, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney who had spent years fighting cases of corporate misconduct. "They're trying to silence you," Rachel told Anika during their first meeting, "but they underestimated your strength. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win." The lawsuit quickly became a media sensation. News outlets framed it as a David and Goliath battle, with Anika as the underdog hero standing up to a powerful corporation. Public support for Anika surged, with hashtags like "Stand with Anika" trending across social media. The trial itself was grueling, with the mall's lawyers attempting to paint Anika as a reckless instigator who had exaggerated her claims for personal gain. But Rachel was relentless, dismantling their arguments piece by piece. In a pivotal moment during the trial, Anika took the stand. Speaking directly to the courtroom, she recounted Maya's experience with raw emotion. "This isn't about money or revenge," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "It's about my daughter, and every child like her, knowing they have a place in this world. I won't apologize for standing up for her." Her testimony struck a chord, not just with the jury but with viewers across the country who watched the trial unfold on live television. After weeks of deliberation, the jury ruled in Anika's favor. The mall was ordered to issue a public apology and pay damages, which Anika pledged to donate entirely to Santa for All. As she stood on the courthouse steps, surrounded by supporters, Anika felt an overwhelming sense of triumph. "This isn't the end," she told the crowd. "This is just the beginning. Together, we're going to keep fighting. For every child. Everywhere." Months after her legal victory, Anika Lawrence found herself at a crossroads. The lawsuit against the Grand Evergreen Mall had not only vindicated her, but also solidified her position as a national advocate for inclusion. Santa for All had grown into a thriving nonprofit organization, with chapters sprouting up in cities across the United States. Yet the fight was far from over. Anika's newfound prominence brought opportunities she had never imagined, including speaking engagements, partnerships with major brands, and even offers for book deals. But with these came an intense pressure to maintain her momentum while juggling the demands of her everyday life. One day, after a particularly exhausting round of interviews, Anika sat at her kitchen table, staring at her laptop. Emails poured in non-stop, some congratulating her, others criticizing her, and a few offering unsolicited advice. Maya was in the living room, quietly drawing pictures of Santa Clauses with different skin tones and costumes. "Mommy," Maya called out, her voice breaking Anika's spiral of thoughts. Anika turned to see her daughter holding up a picture. "Do you think Santa is proud of me?" The question hit Anika like a lightning bolt. She walked over and knelt beside her daughter, taking the picture in her hands. It showed a group of Santas, each unique, smiling together under the words, "Santa for everyone." "Maya," Anika said softly, "Santa would be so proud of you, and so am I." As she hugged her daughter, Anika felt a wave of clarity. This wasn't just about events, lawsuits, or headlines. It was about creating a world where Maya, and every child, could grow up knowing they belonged. But then came the letter. It arrived in a crisp white envelope with no return address, slipped under her apartment door late one evening. Anika's heart sank as she opened it, fearing another hateful message. Instead, it was something far stranger. The letter was typed, its tone formal and chilling. "Ms. Lawrence, while your intentions may appear noble, your actions have disrupted long-standing traditions and created unnecessary division. Not everyone shares your vision of change, and you would do well to reconsider your path before it leads to further consequences." A concerned party. Anika felt a cold sweat break out on her skin. Unlike the usual social media comments or emails, this message felt personal, too close to home. She called Pastor Williams her trusted confidant. "It's probably just someone trying to scare you," he said, though his voice betrayed a hint of concern. "But I don't like that they know where you live. Maybe it's time to consider moving." The suggestion felt drastic, but Anika couldn't ignore the unease growing in her chest. Over the next few weeks, she took extra precautions, changing her daily routine, double-checking her locks, and arranging for Maya to stay with her grandmother more often. Yet the letter was only the beginning. During a Santa for All event in Philadelphia, where Anika was scheduled to speak, things took a sinister turn. As she stood on stage addressing a crowd of families, a commotion erupted at the back of the room. A man, his face partially obscured by a hood, began shouting, "This is a joke! You're ruining Christmas for everyone!" Before security could intervene, he threw a small object toward the stage. It landed with a dull thud near Anika's feet, a blackened lump of coal wrapped in red ribbon. The crowd gasped as the man was escorted out, and Anika's hands trembled as she tried to regain her composure. She finished her speech, but the incident left her shaken. That night, as she lay awake in her hotel room, she replayed the scene in her mind. Who was behind this? And how far were they willing to go? The turning point came during a meeting with Rachel Chen, her lawyer, who had remained a close ally. Rachel had been quietly investigating the source of the letter and the coal incident, working with a private investigator to uncover who was targeting Anika. One afternoon, Rachel called Anika into her office, her expression serious. "We found something," Rachel said, sliding a folder across the desk. Inside were photos and documents linking the anonymous threats to a former employee of the Grand Evergreen Mall, a man named Gary Rollins. "He worked as an event coordinator," Rachel explained, "and was let go after the lawsuit. He's been vocal online about blaming you for his termination." Anika stared at the folder, a mix of relief and anger coursing through her. She wasn't imagining things. There was someone actively trying to intimidate her. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We report it to the authorities," Rachel said firmly. "This goes beyond harassment. He's crossed a line." The investigation into Gary Rollins unfolded quickly. Police discovered more evidence linking him to the coal incident and several of the threatening messages Anika had received. When he was arrested, it made headlines once again, reigniting the conversation about the challenges activists face when standing up to entrenched systems of power. For Anika, the ordeal was both a victory and a wake-up call. The fight for justice wasn't just about changing policies or winning lawsuits. It was about enduring the personal toll that came with challenging the status quo. In the aftermath of Rollins' arrest, Anika decided to take a step back from the spotlight. She handed over day-to-day operations of Santa for All to a trusted team, focusing instead on spending more time with Maya and returning to her roots as a nurse. One evening, as they decorated their Christmas tree, Maya looked up at her mother. "Mommy, do you think everything will be okay now?" Anika smiled, placing a hand over her daughter's. "I think it will be, sweetie, because no matter what happens, we'll always have each other." As they hung the final ornament, a globe with the words "For Everyone" etched into its surface, Anika felt a profound sense of peace. The road had been long and full of challenges, but she had done what she set out to do. She had made the world a little brighter for Maya and so many others. In the months following Gary Rollins's arrest, the story of Anika Lawrence and Santa for All continued to reverberate across the country. While the immediate threat had been neutralized, the consequences of her actions, both good and bad, were far from over. Anika was no longer just a mother or a nurse. She had become a symbol, a figurehead for a movement that sparked both admiration and controversy. For supporters of her cause, Anika was a beacon of courage. Parents from all walks of life reached out to thank her for standing up against discrimination and ensuring their children felt included during the holiday season. Schools began integrating lessons about inclusivity and cultural traditions, and businesses started rethinking how they approached their holiday programming. Even the Grand Evergreen Mall announced sweeping changes, including the addition of Santas from diverse backgrounds and staff training on cultural sensitivity. Yet, as the movement grew, so did the opposition. Critics accused Anika of politicizing Christmas, claiming her efforts were unnecessary and divisive. Online forums were ablaze with debates, with some arguing that she was ruining a cherished tradition by imposing modern values on a timeless symbol. One evening, as Anika scrolled through her phone, she came across a post from a prominent conservative commentator. The story of Anika Lawrence is a cautionary tale of what happens when people force their agendas onto sacred traditions. Christmas should be about unity, not division. Let's take back the holiday for everyone. The post had thousands of likes and shares, and the comments section was a cesspool of vitriol. Anika sighed, setting her phone aside. "Mommy, are people still being mean?" Maya asked, her small voice cutting through the quiet. Anika turned to her daughter, who was perched on the couch with a coloring book. She hesitated, not wanting to burden Maya with the complexities of the world. "Some people don't understand what we're trying to do," Anika said gently. "But that's okay. What matters is that we're helping kids feel happy and loved." Maya nodded thoughtfully, then returned to her drawing. Despite the backlash, Anika's impact was undeniable. At work, colleagues who had once seen her as just another nurse now treated her with newfound respect. Her patients, especially parents, often expressed their gratitude for her courage. One day, while Anika was tending to a young boy recovering from surgery, his mother pulled her aside. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman said, her eyes brimming with tears. "My daughter is biracial, and for the first time she saw a Santa who looked like her. She couldn't stop talking about it for days. You've changed more lives than you'll ever know." Moments like these reminded Anika why she had fought so hard, but they didn't erase the challenges. The relentless media attention took its toll on Anika's personal life. Old friends stopped reaching out, unsure of how to approach her newfound fame. Even simple trips to the grocery store or the park became complicated, as strangers either approached her with praise or stared at her with disdain. Pastor Williams, who remained one of her closest allies, encouraged her to embrace the moment. "You've been given a platform, Anika," he said during one of their many meetings. "It's a gift, even if it doesn't always feel like one. Use it wisely." Anika took his words to heart. She began giving more public speeches, focusing not just on the holiday season but on the broader importance of representation and inclusion. At one event, held at a packed community center, she shared a memory that resonated deeply with the audience. "When I was a little girl," she said, "I remember going to see Santa at the mall. I was so excited. But when I got there, I didn't see anyone who looked like me. I still sat on Santa's lap, but something about it didn't feel real. Now, I realize how important it is for every child to see themselves in the magic of the season. That's why we're here, to make sure no child ever feels left out again." The audience erupted in applause, but Anika noticed a familiar face in the crowd. Rachel Chen, her lawyer and confidant, smiling proudly. As Christmas approached, Anika received an invitation that took her by surprise. The mayor of New York City wanted to honor her work with Santa for All by hosting a special tree lighting ceremony in her name at Rockefeller Center. Initially, Anika hesitated. The idea of standing in front of such a large audience felt daunting, especially after everything she had endured. But Maya's excitement quickly changed her mind. "You have to say yes, Mommy," Maya exclaimed. "We can light the tree together." And so, on a crisp December evening, Anika and Maya stood side by side on the grand stage, surrounded by a sea of spectators and cameras. The mayor gave a heartfelt speech about the importance of Anika's work, before inviting her to press the button that would illuminate the iconic tree. As the lights flickered to life, casting a brilliant glow over the crowd, Maya squealed with delight. Anika looked down at her daughter, her heart swelling with pride. In that moment, all the struggles, sacrifices, and sleepless nights felt worth it. The ripple effects of the ceremony were immediate. Donations to Santa for All surged, allowing the organization to expand its reach to rural communities and smaller towns that had previously been overlooked. Anika began receiving invitations to collaborate with schools, libraries, and even major corporations, looking to make their holiday events more inclusive. But for Anika, the real victory wasn't in the headlines or the accolades. It was in the quiet moments, like seeing Maya beam with pride as she shared her story with classmates, or watching other children's faces light up as they interacted with Santas, who reflected their own identities. The journey hadn't been easy, and the challenges were far from over. But as Anika sat by the fire on Christmas Eve, sipping hot cocoa while Maya played with her puppy, Hero, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. They had come so far, and there was still so much more to do. The turning of the calendar year didn't diminish the momentum Anika Lawrence had sparked. Santa for All had grown into a national symbol of inclusion, with more communities adopting diverse and culturally rich holiday celebrations. Yet the pace of change brought new challenges, forcing Anika to confront not only the external pressures of her activism, but also her own limitations as a mother and individual. One of the first lessons Anika learned in the months following her Rockefeller Center recognition was the importance of balance. While Santa for All consumed much of her time, Maya's needs remained her top priority. At just 6 years old, Maya had become an unwitting participant in a movement that was far bigger than her original disappointment at the mall. As much as she enjoyed seeing her mother on television and helping out at events, she often asked questions that revealed the weight of her young mind. "Mommy," she asked one night while they were brushing her hair before bed, "why do some people not like us?" Anika paused, her hand stilling for a moment before she continued with the brush. "It's not about us, baby," she said softly. "Sometimes people don't understand things that are different from what they're used to, but that doesn't make us any less important. You're perfect just the way you are." Though Anika's words were comforting, they reminded her of the heavy responsibility she carried. She wasn't just fighting for inclusion, she was teaching her daughter resilience in a world that often felt resistant to change. As Santa for All expanded, logistical and organizational challenges arose. Partnering with local governments, schools, and businesses often meant navigating layers of bureaucracy. Every new city brought a fresh wave of skepticism, with some arguing that diversity initiatives were unnecessary, or a distraction from the true meaning of Christmas. One notable conflict arose when a small-town mayor in Kansas publicly rejected the initiative, calling it an attack on tradition. His words sparked outrage among supporters, but also emboldened critics who echoed his sentiment. The rejection stung, but Anika saw it as an opportunity to double down on her message. "Tradition doesn't have to mean exclusion," she told a news outlet covering the controversy. "In fact, the best traditions evolve to include everyone, making them stronger and more meaningful." Her calm but firm response gained widespread praise, but the pressure was taking a toll. At home, Anika often found herself drained, trying to juggle meetings, public appearances, and quality time with Maya. She relied heavily on her inner circle, particularly Pastor Williams and Rachel Chen, both of whom became instrumental in helping her navigate the complexities of her newfound role. "You're only one person, Anika," Rachel reminded her after a particularly grueling week. "You can't do it all alone." Taking Rachel's advice, Anika began delegating more responsibilities within Santa for All. She appointed a dedicated team of regional directors to oversee local events, giving her the space to focus on broader strategy and her family. Amid the chaos, there were moments of profound personal growth. Anika found herself reflecting on her own childhood and the experiences that shaped her. Raised in a small southern town, she had often felt the sting of being overlooked or underestimated. Her parents, though loving and supportive, had taught her to keep her head down and avoid making waves. Be grateful for what you have, her mother used to say. But now, as Anika looked at Maya, she realized the importance of teaching her daughter something different, the courage to stand tall and speak out, even when it was uncomfortable. To reinforce this lesson, Anika began involving Maya in more of her work. She encouraged her daughter to share her ideas for Santa for All events, and even let her speak at a small community gathering. Standing on stage with her mother, Maya held the microphone tightly and declared, "Everyone should have a Santa, no matter what they look like. That's why my mommy is the best." The crowd erupted in applause, and Anika felt a lump rise in her throat. For all the challenges they faced, moments like this reminded her why the fight was worth it. But not every moment was triumphant. One night, after a particularly heated online debate had spilled into her inbox with a barrage of hate mail, Anika broke down in tears. Maya had gone to bed hours earlier, and the apartment was quiet except for the sound of her sobs. She called Pastor Williams, her voice shaking as she admitted, "I don't know if I can keep doing this. It feels like no matter what I do, someone is always there to tear it apart." The pastor's response was gentle but firm. "Anika, you're walking a hard road, but you're not walking it alone, and you're doing more than you know. Don't let the voices of a few drown out the gratitude of the many." Those words stayed with her. The next morning, she opened her email and reread the supportive messages she had received, letting them wash over her like a balm. By the following Christmas, Santa for All had become a fixture in dozens of cities, with new partnerships forming every day. Anika began receiving invitations to collaborate on year-round initiatives, including educational programs and cultural festivals. She accepted cautiously, ensuring her focus remained on the heart of the mission, creating a world where every child felt they belonged. At home, life had settled into a more manageable rhythm. Anika spent more evenings with Maya, helping her with homework, baking cookies, and planning their own Christmas traditions. One night as they decorated their tree, Maya pulled out an ornament she had made at school. It was a small globe with the words, "Love for Everyone," written in glitter. "Do you like it, Mommy?" Maya asked, holding it up proudly. Anika smiled, taking the ornament in her hands. "I love it, sweetie. It's perfect." They hung the ornament together, and as the tree sparkled with lights, Anika felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had also been transformative. She wasn't just fighting for change, she was living it, one step at a time. As the next holiday season approached, Santa for All faced its most ambitious challenge yet, organizing a nationwide event called One Day for Every Child. The plan was bold. On December 20th, malls, schools, community centers, and even public parks across the country would simultaneously host events showcasing diverse Santas and inclusive holiday traditions. The goal wasn't just to create magical moments for children, it was to send a powerful message about unity and belonging. Anika had spent months preparing for this day, working tirelessly with her team and partners. The pressure to deliver was immense, and she felt it in every fiber of her being. This event wasn't just a milestone for Santa for All, it was a culmination of everything she had fought for. But as the event drew closer, resistance escalated. Online, detractors circulated conspiracy theories claiming the initiative was erasing Christmas or replacing traditional values. Some cities, bowing to public pressure, backed out of the event entirely, citing logistical concerns. Anika tried to remain focused, but as the setbacks piled up, doubts crept in. One evening, as she sat in her office surrounded by stacks of paperwork and unanswered emails, Rachel Chen walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You look like you're running on fumes," Rachel said, setting 1 cup in front of her. Anika sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I keep asking myself if this is too much," she admitted. "What if it all falls apart?" Rachel's eyes softened. "It won't," she said firmly, "because you've already succeeded. This isn't just about December 20th. It's about everything you've done to get us here. The fact that this is even happening is proof of how far you've come." Anika smiled weakly, grateful for Rachel's encouragement. But as the day of the event approached, unforeseen challenges threatened to derail everything. 3 days before, One Day for Every Child, a snowstorm swept across the Midwest, shutting down travel and forcing several key venues to cancel. Anika's phone buzzed nonstop with updates from worried coordinators. "We'll make it work," she said during an emergency call with her team. If we can't do it in person, we'll take it online. We've come too far to let this stop us. The idea of a virtual component wasn't new, but implementing it on such short notice seemed impossible. Yet Anika's team, inspired by her determination, worked around the clock to set up live-streamed events and video meet-and-greets with Santas from across the country. Meanwhile, in cities where the storm hadn't hit, volunteers doubled their efforts to ensure their events went off without a hitch. On the morning of December 20th, Anika woke up before dawn, her nerves buzzing with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Maya, sensing her mother's tension, crawled into her bed and wrapped her small arms around her. "Today's the big day, Mommy," she whispered. Anika hugged her daughter tightly. "It is, sweetie," she said. "And no matter what happens, I'm so proud of what we've done." The day began with a live-streamed opening ceremony broadcast from a bustling community center in Harlem. Pastor Williams, one of the event's earliest supporters, led the ceremony with an impassioned speech about the importance of inclusion and unity. "Today, we're proving that the magic of the holidays belongs to all of us," he declared. "No matter where we come from, what we look like, or what we believe, we all deserve to feel the joy of this season." Anika, standing beside him, felt tears prick her eyes as the crowd erupted into cheers. From there, events unfolded across the country. In Los Angeles, a bilingual Santa greeted children in Spanish and English, sharing stories about how Christmas was celebrated in Latin American countries. In Chicago, a group of volunteers dressed as Santas from around the world, complete with traditional costumes, invited children to learn about different cultural traditions. Even the virtual events, hastily organized in the wake of the snowstorm, were a hit. Families logged in from rural towns and storm-struck cities, their children beaming as they chatted with Santas who looked and spoke like them. Maya, sitting beside Anika during one of the live streams, grinned as she watched a little boy excitedly show off his drawing to a Santa who spoke Mandarin. "Mommy, it's working," Maya said, her face glowing with pride. Anika smiled, her heart swelling with relief and gratitude. But just as the day seemed to be unfolding perfectly, a crisis threatened to shatter the momentum. Mid-afternoon, Anika received a call from a volunteer coordinator in Texas. Protesters had gathered outside one of the event's largest venues, holding signs with messages like, "Keep Christ in Christmas," and "Say no to Santa for all." The protesters were loud and aggressive, intimidating families who were trying to enter. Fearing for the safety of the children, the venue's management considered shutting the event down entirely. Anika's mind raced as she listened to the coordinator explain the situation. Shutting down the event would be a devastating blow, but she couldn't risk anyone getting hurt. "I'll handle it," she said, her voice calm but resolute. Without hesitation, she arranged a press conference outside the venue, stepping into the chaos to address the protesters and the media that had gathered. "We are not here to erase anyone's traditions," Anika said, her voice steady, despite the tension in the air. "We are here to celebrate the beauty of all traditions. This is about creating joy for every child, not taking it away from anyone else." Her words, broadcast live on national television, struck a chord with viewers. Slowly, the tension outside the venue began to dissipate. Some of the protesters left, while others lowered their signs, seemingly moved by her message. Inside the venue, the event continued as planned, with families laughing, singing, and celebrating together. As the day came to a close, Anika sat with Maya, watching a highlight reel of the day's events. From the Santas to the smiling children to the parents who expressed their gratitude, it was clear that one day for every child had been a resounding success. Maya rested her head on Anika's shoulder, her voice soft with contentment. "We did it, Mommy," she said. Anika kissed the top of her daughter's head, her heart full. "We sure did, sweetie," she replied. "We sure did." The success of One Day for Every Child catapulted Anika Lawrence and Santa for All into the national spotlight. News outlets hailed the event as groundbreaking, while families flooded social media with photos and videos of their children smiling with Santas of every ethnicity, language, and background. Anika's mission to make the holidays more inclusive had reached millions, and the momentum was unstoppable, but the overwhelming triumph brought its most dangerous confrontation yet. 2 weeks after the event, while Anika and her team were compiling feedback to prepare for the next year's celebrations, she received an ominous email. Unlike the flood of congratulatory messages, this one chilled her to her core. "You've gone too far. Stop before someone makes you." It was unsigned, with no traceable information. Anika's heart pounded as she stared at the screen. She had faced hate mail and online threats before, but this felt different, more direct and personal. Her first instinct was to protect Maya, who was happily drawing pictures in the next room. Without hesitation, Anika forwarded the email to Rachel Chen and called Pastor Williams. "It's getting worse," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm worried about Maya. What if someone really does something this time?" Pastor Williams, as always, offered calm reassurance. "You're not alone in this, Anika. We'll face it together. But you have to stay vigilant." Rachel, too, took the threat seriously. She contacted law enforcement, who began an investigation, but the lack of leads left Anika feeling exposed. The tension escalated days later when Anika noticed a man lingering near her apartment building. She saw him from her kitchen window, pacing the sidewalk and glancing up at her floor. Her chest tightened as she recognized him from news photos. Gary Rollins, the disgruntled former employee of the Grand Evergreen Mall who had been arrested for earlier harassment. How was he free? And why was he here? Anika immediately called the police, but by the time they arrived, Rollins had disappeared. The incident left her shaken, prompting her to move Maya temporarily to her grandmother's house for safety. The fear of retaliation didn't stop Anika from pressing forward. She knew her cause was too important to abandon. When a prominent daytime talk show invited her for an exclusive interview about the success of Santa for All, Anika accepted, determined to keep the momentum alive. The day of the interview arrived, and Anika sat under the bright studio lights, her heart pounding as the host introduced her. "Our next guest is a modern-day hero," the host began, smiling warmly. "Her movement, Santa for All, has transformed the holidays for millions of families. Please welcome Anika Lawrence." The audience erupted in applause, and Anika felt a swell of gratitude. This was her chance to amplify her message and solidify her mission. The interview began smoothly, with Anika recounting the origins of Santa for All and the overwhelming success of One Day for Every Child. But as the conversation deepened, the host brought up the threats Anika had faced. "It can't be easy," the host said, her tone empathetic. "Knowing there are people out there who oppose your work so strongly. How do you stay strong?" Anika took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "It's not easy," she admitted, "but I remind myself every day why I started this. It's for my daughter, Maya, and for every child who deserves to feel like they belong. Fear is powerful, but love and determination are stronger." The audience applauded, and Anika felt a glimmer of hope. But as she exited the studio after the show, that hope was quickly overshadowed by unease. Waiting outside the building was Gary Rollins. Anika's pulse quickened as their eyes met. He didn't move toward her but stood watching, his presence suffocating. Anika's security escort noticed her reaction and immediately ushered her into a waiting car. "We're calling the police," the guard said firmly as the car sped away. Later that evening, police arrested Rollins outside his motel, finding disturbing evidence in his room. He had written detailed plans for following Anika and disrupting future Santa for All events. Though his intent remained unclear, the authorities assured Anika that the immediate threat was neutralized. Still, the ordeal left her shaken. That night, as she sat alone in her apartment, she reflected on everything she had endured. The lawsuit, the protests, the threats, all of it had pushed her to the brink. Was it worth it? Could she keep going? Her phone buzzed with a video message from Pastor Williams. It showed a group of children at a Santa for All event, laughing as they talked to a Santa who shared their cultural background. At the end of the clip, a young girl looked into the camera and said, "Thank you, Miss Anika. You made my Christmas the best ever." Tears filled Anika's eyes as she watched. She thought of Maya, asleep at her grandmother's house, and the countless children who had experienced joy and belonging because of her work. Yes, it was worth it. The following week, Anika hosted a press conference to announce new plans for Santa for All, including a scholarship fund for children from underprivileged communities. Standing at the podium, she addressed both her supporters and her detractors. "This isn't about me," she said firmly. "It's about a simple idea. Every child deserves to feel seen, valued, and loved. The holidays are a time for unity, not division. and no amount of fear or hate will stop us from spreading that message." The applause was deafening, and Anika felt an unshakable resolve. The climax of her journey wasn't just about surviving the threats or overcoming the obstacles. It was about reclaiming her power and proving that courage could triumph over fear. As Anika returned home that evening, she found a note from Maya taped to the fridge. In her wobbly handwriting it read, "Mommy, you're the best Santa for everyone. I love you." Anika smiled, holding the note close to her heart. For all the battles she had fought, this was her greatest reward. The year following, One Day for Every Child, marked a turning point in Anika Lawrence's journey. What began as a single mother's effort to protect her daughter from discrimination had evolved into a nationwide movement that reshaped how people thought about the holidays. Despite the challenges and threats she had faced, Anika emerged stronger, more determined and more hopeful than ever. By the next holiday season, Santa for All was a household name. With chapters in all 50 states and a growing international presence, the organization was no longer just about diversifying holiday celebrations. It had expanded to include educational programs, cultural festivals, and year-round initiatives aimed at promoting inclusivity. Anika, while still the face of the movement, had stepped back from the day-to-day operations to focus on what mattered most: her family. Maya, now a year older and wiser, continued to inspire her mother with her boundless optimism and creativity. On Christmas Eve, Anika and Maya sat together on the living room floor, wrapping gifts for their friends and neighbors. The tree twinkled with colorful lights, and the room was filled with the comforting scent of cinnamon and pine. "Mommy," Maya said, carefully tying a bow around a small box, "do you think Santa is proud of us?" Anika smiled, pausing to look at her daughter. "I think Santa is very proud of us," she said. "But more importantly, I think the kids we've helped are proud of you too. You're the reason all of this started." Maya beamed, her eyes shining with pride. As midnight approached, Anika and Maya bundled up in warm coats and scarves. Together, they walked to a nearby community center that was hosting a Santa for All event. Anika had decided to keep their visit a surprise, wanting to see the celebration from the perspective of the families who attended. When they arrived, the sight was breathtaking. The center was alive with laughter and joy, children darting between activity stations while volunteers handed out gifts and snacks. A group of Santas, each representing a different culture, sat in a semicircle, listening to children share their Christmas wishes. Anika watched as a young girl with braided hair climbed onto the lap of an African-American Santa. The child's mother stood nearby, tears streaming down her face as she snapped a photo. "Thank you," the woman whispered to no one in particular, her voice filled with emotion. Anika's heart swelled as she realized the profound impact of her work. These moments, simple, joyful, and transformative, were the culmination of everything she had fought for. Before they left, Anika and Maya approached the Santas to thank them for their dedication. One of them, a gray-haired man with a kind smile, recognized Anika immediately. "You've done something extraordinary," he said, shaking her hand. "You've reminded us what the holidays are really about." As Anika and Maya walked home under the glow of streetlights, snow began to fall gently around them. Maya skipped ahead, laughing as she caught snowflakes on her tongue. Anika paused for a moment, letting the peace of the night wash over her. The journey had been difficult, filled with obstacles she never could have imagined, but it had also been beautiful, filled with love, growth, and moments of triumph that would stay with her forever. This Christmas wasn't just about giving Maya the magic she deserved. It was about creating a world where every child could feel that magic too. And in her heart, Anika knew they were just getting started. A year later, a framed photo hung in Anika Lawrence's living room. Maya, sitting proudly among a group of diverse Santas, her smile as bright as the holiday lights. The photo captured the essence of what Santa for All had become, a movement rooted in love, hope, and the belief that every child deserved to feel seen. Anika stood by the tree, watching Maya place the star on top, her laughter filling the room. The journey had been long, but as Anika looked ahead, she knew their story wasn't over. The magic they'd created would last for generations to come. This story isn't just about one mother's fight for inclusion. It's a testament to the power of everyday acts of courage that ripple outward and create lasting change. Anika's journey with Santa for All began with a single question from her daughter. but it grew into a movement that inspired millions. Her story reminds us of a universal truth. Small actions, driven by love and determination, can transform lives. Imagine the difference you can make by standing up for someone, supporting an inclusive cause, or simply spreading kindness in your community. These moments, though seemingly small, hold the power to challenge unfairness and build a world where everyone feels they belong. If Anika's journey has inspired you, take the next step. Seek out opportunities to support initiatives that foster inclusion and celebrate diversity. Volunteer at local events, contribute to organizations making a difference, or even start conversations that challenge outdated beliefs. The magic of the holidays, and life itself, is magnified when we extend it to everyone, regardless of their background. By embracing this spirit, we ensure that no one is left out of the joy, love, and hope that make these moments meaningful. Let this be a reminder that change starts with you. Whether it's standing up against injustice, amplifying voices that need to be heard, or simply listening and learning, your actions matter. Let's create a brighter, more inclusive world together.